an island nation surrounded by the Mediterranean, it's hard to believe Malta's most pressing concern is lack of water. But go inland and Malta's climate struggle is marked out on the earth. What was once viable farmland is becoming arid. A desert is creeping across Malta. The EU's smallest country has one of its biggest climate-related problems.
I think it's a dream when it rains in January, when it's supposed to be the wettest month. This year it was the hottest month.
Joseph, like his father and grandfather before him, is a potato farmer, but he fears his generation could be where it stops.
As a farmer, have you noticed that it's becoming much drier in Malta? And is that making it much more difficult to farm?
Very difficult, because we're now relying on underground sources of water, and it's becoming unsustainable as well. It's becoming a huge problem in the country. And hand to heart, I think we're going to stop at one point in time.
Do you think farming could die out on Malta entirely?
I think it's already dead. The difficulty is growing, and trees are dying. The carob trees that have at least a century or two, or maybe even some of them 3, are dying. We can't go around it. The only point of origin is water. If there's no water, there's no life. That's it. Nothing can live without water, nothing.
You're never far from the sea in Malta, and yet all of this water masks a difficult truth. There are just 58 days of rain a year on average here. Wonderful for tourists, but barely sustainable for living. And 4 out of the past 6 years failed to meet even that level of rain, which puts Malta on the front line of climate change. Malta is one of the countries that is particularly feeling the effects of climate change already. Can you explain to me how that is being felt here?
It is a small island state. It's much more vulnerable to climate change. The reality is that rain is really becoming more and more scarce each year.
Malta clearly has always been very dry, but now it is particularly at risk from desertification.
Yes, definitely. I think if things go on as they are now, in the sense that the lack of rainfall persists, yes, I think we will lose a few of our natural habitats, especially those that are most vulnerable and most susceptible to aridity. In reality, we are minimal emitters in the EU, and the ones that are likely to suffer the most consequences.
Those consequences are exacerbated by Malta's geography. Whilst it's famed for its World Heritage sites like Valletta, get out into the countryside and what's most striking about the landscape is the complete absence of any lakes or rivers. Malta's only source of fresh water is underground, a giant aquifer spreading over 180 square kilometres.
We're going to go 100 metres below ground in this metal cage. The journey should take around 7 or 8 minutes until we get down to the level of the aquifer.
The network of tunnels were dug over 70 years ago. Officially, the aquifer supplies over 40% of Malta's water, but it's being drained by thousands of unofficial boreholes too.
Oh wow, this is pretty spectacular. How far does the tunnel go in this direction?
This goes to Kandy about 3 kilometers.
And the one in that direction?
5 kilometers, goes to Taal.
So it's a really big network. The water here is startlingly clear, but it is already becoming more salty, an indication that Malta's greatest natural resource is being used up at a rate faster than it's being replenished. Even this vast underground supply in danger of being sucked dry.
There is rampant abuse of our natural water systems, particularly groundwater. And ultimately, this is a finite resource. To make matters worse, climate change is not helping. And ultimately, this reserve is going to run out.
Marco Cremona is a water engineer and conservationist. He's been instrumental in finding alternative sources of water, including a use for Malta's sewage.
We're here in this landscape, which is showing the effects of the warming climate on Malta, but we're also seeing here
part of the potential solutions?
Yes, this installation and 2 others in Malta have been a godsend for farmers. The first stage was to treat sewage to a level that it could be discharged safely into the sea. At a later stage, it was considered that they could go one step further and actually treat it to a better quality that it can be reused for irrigation, especially by farmers. It might sound rather drastic that we're producing good water out of sewage, but actually it's what's required.
Driven by need, Malta has also turned to the sea. This country has become a pioneer in desalination, a process which removes the salt from seawater and turns it into water fresh enough to drink. But it's expensive, and because it uses vast amounts of energy, it makes Malta vulnerable in a whole new way.
This reservoir, which has the feel of an underground cathedral, has been abandoned for decades. Now the Maltese government is restoring it and others like it around the country in an attempt to guarantee Malta's water supply against power cuts which could shut down the desalination plants completely.
So with Malta's water supply facing particular challenges, some here are taking matters into their own hands. Malta's population is one of the most eco-conscious in Europe. For the Vassallo family, water conservation is not a game.
So first of all, tell me about the taps. Tell me how all this works.
So we don't waste too much water, we have this button that stops the water. So like if you just need it to stop just for a little bit, we don't just close it, we just use this and it will stop the water completely from coming out.
I'm impressed by how much the children understand about the process
I
as
speak
well.
to them a lot because I want them to be aware of the problems and that we conserve water. I do worry a real lot, that too much is being extracted by the people, by the nation, and not much is being placed back by nature, basically. And we can do nothing about it. I mean, you can't just flip a switch and make it rain.
We normally use Echo.
Everything in their house has been designed with water conservation in mind, from water-saving appliances to a system that collects their wastewater to irrigate the garden.
I wanted to make use of rainwater as much as possible and to find ways to decrease loss of water. We collect most of the rainwater that falls over the area of the house. We have enough rains. Sometimes it does serve us through the whole summer then.
And is this because you were looking ahead and thinking water is really scarce on Malta, this is something that everybody's got to take responsibility for themselves?
Yes, I think it's everybody should do his part.
How much do you think about the water that you use?
A lot, because I know that nothing can go on forever, and if we use too much water or we waste too much water, we can't get it back. So we could run out, especially since we are a small island.
Do you learn about conserving water, saving water?
Yes, because if we don't have water in the earth, if we don't have any water, then we can't survive.
During my time on these islands, I discovered that yes, Malta faces particularly difficult climate challenges that are already having an impact on life here. But also they've looked ahead in a way we haven't yet had to, and have a warning about what water scarcity might look like for all of us.
The wars are not going to be about oil. The wars are going to start about water. And that's going to be a large issue in the future. Oil is going to become nothing. Water is going to become everything.